Hi everyone. So in this video I'm going to be listing disappointing albums by great musicians. So these are these are albums that were disappointing to me, in just my opinion. They disappointed me, but I do love the artists that made these albums. So yeah, I'm going to be doing I'm going to be listing 5 albums here. So this is no particular order, and I actually don't own any of these albums except for one. So the first one that I'm going to talk about, that I do have this one, it's Black Tie, White Noise by David Bowie. Yeah, I just really struggle to get into this album. I mean, I love David Bowie, big David Bowie fan. He's my favourite solo artist. But this album is probably, well, the one that I mean, I'm not really a big fan of this era of Bowie, the 90s. But yeah, this one I just struggle to get into. I just find it drags. I find it pretty boring, and I just find myself, skipping through all the tracks just to find a hidden gem. And I find myself just wanting to fall asleep. It does have a saving grace on here, which is Jump They Say. That's a great track, which was the single from here. That is the saving grace. But other than that, though, I just don't really find it all that enjoyable, to be honest. I've tried with this album many times. I'll keep trying, but I don't know if my opinion will ever change. Next one I'm going to talk about is Chinese Democracy by Guns N' Roses. So, yeah, I love Guns N' Roses, but yeah, this album is just, it's overproduced. The production is awful. It's overproduced. It has a heavy use of synthesizers and electronic drums, which to me, that doesn't work for Guns N' Roses. And not to mention, Axl Rose is the only original member on it. Slash is not on this album. So yeah, I do miss Slash's tasty guitar riffs. And yeah, the production on this album. It's just, to me, it's just awful. I just cannot listen to this album. I just can't listen to it. I've tried, but the production just hurts my ears. So the next one I'm going to talk about is Just Push Play by Aerosmith. And yeah, I love Aerosmith. I love their stuff from the 70s and 80s. And 90s is when they started going downhill, but they still had a few gems. But yeah, I think this is their worst album. I just don't like the production. And yeah, I just don't think the songwriting is all that inspiring, to be honest. And yeah, it's just too pop sounding for me. It's just got this modern pop sound to it that I just don't like. Not to mention it has a terrible cover as well. The cover art is dreadful as well. But that's a topic for another video, where I do want to talk about worst album covers. But yeah, this album does nothing. It just does nothing for me. I just can't listen to it. Next one I'm going to talk about is The Endless River by Pink Floyd. So this was Pink Floyd's last studio album. And yeah, I personally find the album to be just boring in most places. I did a Pink Floyd album ranking, and I did put this one in last place. I don't think the album is dreadful. You know, David Gilmour's guitar playing on it is good. You know, I just wish that it had more vocals on it. You know, the album it's mainly just instrumental, apart from Louder Than Words, which is the only track on the album to actually have vocals, lyrics on it. And that's a good track. You know, that's a pretty good track with David Gilmour singing. But the rest of the album's just instrumental, which, you know, I mean, every Pink Floyd album had at least one or two instrumentals on them, but this one I think just has too many instrumentals, and it gets boring after a while. So yeah, while I like parts of this album, you know, parts of it I don't mind, but for the most part I just find it boring. So yeah, I never really go back to this one. I mean, Louder Than Words is a decent track, but it's not a top tier Pink Floyd song. So yeah, that's Endless River by Pink Floyd. So that's 4. So the last one I'm going to mention is Smiley Smile by the Beach Boys. Now, I love Pet Sounds, the album that they did before this. Pet Sounds is the best album the Beach Boys ever did, in my opinion. Pet Sounds is a masterpiece. But Smiley Smile was just, to me, just a very, very disappointing follow-up to Pet Sounds. You know, it has, you know, it is saved by 2 absolute brilliant tracks, Heroes and Villains and Good Vibrations. You know, those 2 songs are excellent, but, you know, but apart from those 2 tracks, the rest of the album really does nothing for me. You know, it's got some really just silly songs on it that are just, you know, there's a song on here called Vegetables, which is basically a song about a guy just growing vegetables, and I just find it, it's supposed to be a humorous track, but I just don't find it that amusing. You know, I just find it completely silly and just cringy, and I'm like, what the hell are they doing? And this was an anticipated album. You know, they wanted to make a good follow up to Pet Sounds, and this is what they made. So yeah, it's just the lyrical content on here is just too silly. And yeah, that's why I think Smile, which was originally it was called it was from the Smile Sessions, because they were going to make an album called Smile, but eventually that idea was abandoned, and then they put together Smiley Smile, which is made up of tracks from the Smile Sessions. But of course, the Smile Sessions were later released by Brian Wilson. And personally, I think a lot of the tracks from the Smile Sessions that didn't make it onto the Smiley Smile, I think a lot of those tracks were actually better than the tracks that made the album. You know, it just makes me think what that album could have been than what it was. So yeah, I personally don't care for this album. And yeah, very disappointing follow-up to the masterpiece that is Pet Sounds. So that's 5 disappointing albums by great musicians. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think. And yeah, I will see you again real soon. Take care.